Greetings, YouTube. So I found myself thinking about the gods, and in particular how the gods interact with the world in D&D and Pathfinder. Now, I have always played it as the gods had a hands-off policy, that the gods do not personally intervene in the world itself, that their intervention is through powering their priests and followers and their magical capacities and encouraging them to follow certain ideologies and edicts that support and expand their particular views of the universe. And even though they may send avatars down to aid individual people, they do not use those avatars as weapons against competing religions. So there's never intervention direct. So it's very much like, the United States may send in supplies to help rebels or something, but they're not necessarily attacking their enemies directly. Now, I know this is not how people always play them. For example, in the World's Tree role-playing game, the gods are directly involved in the campaign setting. They will literally walk among the people. I mean, it's rare, but it does happen. In fact, they give one instance where a god goes into a bakery, and because the god doesn't have any money, it's a god, doesn't need money. The person behind the counter, not realizing it's a god, does not serve the person because they have no money, and the god curses their ovens to never produce heat again. And in fact, the ovens now are cold, really cold. He comes back like 10 years later or something, and the bakery has turned itself into an ice cream parlor, which the god is really happy with because the god is a cat and now can have ice cream. So the people turned this around to their advantage. The god was amused by this, and the god got ice cream. So everyone was happy. And I know that player characters can go out into the realm of the gods, go to their planes of existence, or the demi-planes. Not all gods have full-fledged planes. Some of the demigods are less powerful. And interact with them, and even attack them directly. In fact, it's the Q module from the GDQ series, originally published for first edition D&D. I think it was updated for third. I don't think it was it updated for third, or did we do that as fan community? We may have done it as a fan community, but regardless, I've played it in first, second, and third without a problem. And I've used the maps and things like that more times than that, because they're good maps. I like them. And it's not hard to turn something 180 degrees, and the player characters are never aware that it's the same map. Yeah, it's cheap, but it works. Saves you trouble. And you can actually go after Lolth herself and kill her in the module. And I don't know if you actually kill her forever, or you just prevent her from interacting with the material plane for X amount of time. There is under the Hill Giants, under the Storm Giants castle, which is a module that takes place in a cloud. At the end of the module, the big bad is Ozymandias himself, and if you kill him, you banish him from coming into the world for 100 years. And this is from an older iteration of D&D, like first edition, where the bright line between interactions was much blurrier and grayer. So the gods themselves would interact more often, or could. So his ability to come into the plane was important. But from that point on, for the next 100 years, he would only be able to do the more traditional hands-off approach by powering his followers and some of his demons and things like that. Could not himself get involved. So I'm just curious how many other people have done this the same way, having that hands-off approach. Like you can fuel your followers, supply them with power and resources, but you can't interact directly yourself. Or have they done more direct interactions where the gods themselves come down and really get up close and personal, like Dr. Manhattan in Vietnam, like wading across battlefields, blowing things up with a mere thought. And how often have you had campaigns where the player characters have gone off after gods successfully or unsuccessfully? Have your player characters successfully killed gods, or at least curtailed their activities in the world for some period of time, maybe beyond the scope of the campaign. Because I know that there are campaigns out there that have lasted 30 years um, in game time and in real time, and I don't know necessarily how much time that was in game time. That could have been 15 years. It could have been 100 years. Depends on how the campaigns are set up. So tell me, how do you handle divine intervention in the world? What is your preferred model? What model would you like to try that you haven't tried? Um, and have you had any failures? Like you tried Model A just completely collapsed on you, and you would never try Model A again, whatever Model A happened to be. So let's talk about the gods and divine intervention.